Okay. In the times when we were studying microeconomics, we started by defining microeconomics, yes, as the branch of economics, microeconomics. Yes, as the branch of economics that deals with the individual economic units, okay? It deals with how the individual economic units, such as the individuals, the households and the individuals make the independent decisions, especially on the following questions. That is on what to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce, and where to produce, when to produce. So that is what we said under microeconomics. We said that microeconomics hinges around the key points. That is to say, how the individual economic units, to list them, we are talking about the households, the individuals, the firms, how do they make the economic decisions, especially as they try to answer the questions of what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. That was under microeconomics. But in macroeconomics, we are actually looking at the aggregate economy, okay, in macroeconomics. So in macroeconomics, we are looking at the aggregate the aggregate economy. So when I talk about aggregate economy, I mean the economy as a whole, okay? The economy as a whole, not looking at the individual economic units. That is to say, practically, we are not interested in the price of only one good, let's say the price of rice, the price of meal bags, the price of maybe potatoes. This time around, we are looking at the general price level, okay, like the price of all the goods. Yeah, we are not just interested in one things like individual economic units, but we're looking at the entire economy as a whole, the aggregate economy, or studying the economy as a whole. That is what we try to study under macroeconomics. And the following are the key concerns of macroeconomics, okay? Under the key concerns of macroeconomics, we are looking at what does macroeconomics look at? What does macroeconomics look at? So in macroeconomics will address the following questions. The questions that macroeconomics will address, they will hinge around, number one, economic growth. You have to take note of this. Economic growth, they will hinge around inflation. They will hinge around unemployment, and they will hinge around the balance of payments, the balance of what? Of payments. These are the four key areas or domains that macroeconomics tries to look at. So macroeconomics looks at these four key points, okay? It gives us the understanding on economic growth, on inflation, on unemployment, and on balance of payments, okay? So far, have I lost anyone? Are we okay? Are we all fine? Hello.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. If we are okay, that's nice to hear. So I'm just introducing the whole course. So you pay attention to the introduction because the introduction is the most important thing. Number one, we talk about economic growth. What are we looking at when we talk about economic growth, or what is it that we are interested in learning? So when we are talking about economic growth, we are looking at the question, we are answering the question, how is the economy growing as the entire economy? Is our economy growing, or is it stagnant? Okay, is it declining? We are interested, okay, in terms of production as a country, as a whole, as a country, are we improving in terms of production? Have we produced more? Okay. Remember, macroeconomics, it hinges around production. We are talking about production. We measure economic growth in terms of production. Yeah, are we improving in production? Have we produced more, or have we produced less? Okay, that is what we are trying to look at under economic growth. So is our economy growing? Is it stagnant, or is it declining actually? So so when we look at that, when we answer those questions, then we would have understood what economic growth is all about, especially as the macroeconomics is concerned. So when we look at macroeconomics again, under economic growth, there are some key measures, okay, that we use when we are measuring economic growth, and I'll talk about them when I zero in. So there are some of the key measures that we use. We call them the indicators. So the indicators are there to help us understand, is this economy growing? Is this economy stagnant? Or is this economy shrinking? Is it declining? Okay, so there are some key indicators that we use. Also, there are some measures that help us to answer those questions. And I'll talk about them very soon within this same lecture. When I talk about inflation actually, by definition, inflation is an increase, is defined as an increase in the aggregate price level. Okay, let me write that. Okay, it's very important for people to keep in mind. I'm saying that with inflation looks at the overall increase in the aggregate price level, in the general or aggregate price level. So we're looking at the general price level. When you consolidate all the prices of the goods, are they increasing? So when you talk about inflation, we are looking at the constant increase, okay? The constant increase, okay? The constant overall increase in the price level is what is called what? Inflation. Bear in mind that inflation is different from inflation rates, okay? Inflation is not same as the inflation rate, okay? When you talk about inflation rate, we are talking about the rate, the speed at which the prices are increasing, okay? So when the prices are increasing, yeah, quite all right, they're increasing, but the question is, at what rate? How fast are they increasing? Okay, so that is the inflation rate now, the speed at which they're increasing. But the increase, the overall increase in the general price level is called the inflation. Are we fine with inflation? We have known what inflation is. By definition, we have not yet zeroed it. Actually, I'm just defining. Are we all fine with inflation? We know what inflation is all now. Hello?
Yes.
Okay, we should be free in this class. It is meant for us to understand. Okay,
come again
now,
with the definition.
okay, I said inflation it is the constant increase or the constant increase in general price level, or you can say it is the overall increase in the price level. It's still the same thing. Yeah, I'll give you the standard notes. Otherwise, I'll do that. I'll give you the notes, not these that I'm using. These are just power notes. We call them the power notes. They help you to quickly remember the things. But as for detailed notes, I'm here to give. Is that okay?
It's fine, sir.
Okay. If that is fine, we can now look at unemployment. What is it that we'll be talking about when we talk about unemployment? Okay. Unemployment, we will answer the questions such as who is employed? Okay. Okay, what does it take for us to say this person is employed? Or what does it take for us to say this person is unemployed? Okay, we will ask the questions. This is who is employed. We'll ask the questions such as who is and not in the labor force. In the labor force, okay, the labor force. So the question is, who is in the labor force? The labor force, by the way, it is the total sum of those people who are employed plus those who are not employed. That forms the labor force. So ask the question, who qualifies to be in the labor force? Okay, and who is regarded as not in the labor force? So if this person is said not to be in the labor force, he's not in the labor force, is not included in the labor force. Okay. So if the person is not in the labor force, then the question of the day is, how did we come up with that conclusion that this person is not in the labor force? We will answer the questions such as, are the students included in the labor force? Quickly, students are not included in the labor force. They're not part of the working class. Are the people in the prisons included in the labor force? They are not in the labor force. Okay. Are the discouraged workers, those people who have just given up, they tried to look for jobs, but they could not find those jobs. Then they decided to quit. Okay, no, there are no jobs in Zambia. Stopped. Are those people regarded as unemployed or employed? Interesting enough, it is to learn that those people are not regarded as unemployed. We don't count them that they are not employed because they're just discouraged workers. They are not part of the labor force. So how do we measure now how many people are unemployed in Zambia? How do we measure the unemployment rate, like the speed at which people are not employed? How do we measure the labor participation rate? Yeah, those are the questions that we will be answering under unemployment when we zero in. It's not right now, of course, after maybe a month, that's when we'll be able to reach that. Are we fine with unemployment? You have known the key things that we're talking about under unemployment. Hello? Are we all fine? Hello?
Hello?
Am I there?
Okay, sir. No, very clear.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So these are the questions that we'll be answering when we start studying unemployment. And I'm sure we will be fine. The other thing that we will talk about, which is the last component, actually, the last concern, is the balance of payments. The balance of payments. What is it that we'll be talking about? To begin with, you understand that life is interdependent, meaning we depend on each other. Similarly, even in nations depend on each other for economic growth. You will understand that nations import goods and services. They get some goods from other countries, especially for developing countries like Zambia. Zambia does not have the capacity to produce most of its goods. We import. We depend on imports. So the question of the day is, if we are importing, how much do we spend on imports? At the same time, countries like Zambia will be able to sell to other countries in what is known as the exports. When a country is selling to other countries, that is called the export. The nation is said it will be able to export. Okay. Now, when you look at the balance of payment in a nutshell, we will be studying things such as how much have we imported in terms of services, how much services have we imported, how much of labor, that's labor, how much goods, the goods and the services have we imported from outside, and how much have we exported. Okay, we will be answering questions such as how much have we received in terms of the transfers. Remember, developing countries such as Zambia, they receive grants most of the times from the developed countries. For example, during the time of COVID-19, the country of Zambia received a lot of grants from outside, from the external world. There is that money which you receive from outside for help from other nations and from other organizations such as JICA and the UNESCO, among others. So we are interested as a nation to measure how much have we received from outside, okay, in terms of like free money. How much free money have we just received? Okay. At the same time, we cannot just say Zambia is receiving. At the same time, we also do what? We also give. We give other nations. There are some nations that you might be in need of our help as a nation. So we give them. Okay. So as we give them, we also ask ourselves, how much have we given out in that year? So when you're trying to answer the questions, how much have we received, how much have we given, how much have we imported in terms of goods and services, and how much have we exported? You're trying to answer the questions that hinge around the balance of payments. Are we all fine with the balance of payments? Or do I have any question? Is there any question? Hello. Any question?
So in a nutshell, how do you describe the balance of payment?
So the balance of payments, okay, in simpler terms, it's basically a measure of how much in terms of the goods and services how much do we export and how much do we import? Just that, yeah, in a nutshell. How much have we exported? How much have we imported? Did you get it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So to summarize now, to sum it up, we say that macroeconomics deals with number one, economic growth. We said it deals with the inflation. We also said that it deals with the unemployment. And we said it deals with the BOP, the balance of payments. that which is we usually cut short as the POP. So these are the key things that you will be studying in the whole course, actually, of macroeconomics. So far, I have summarized the entire course. The whole course has been summarized. This is the whole course. The whole course just lies here. Before we zero in, now, do I have any question? That was just the introduction. Any question? Okay. Okay. Let's assume that people are now fine. We can now zero in. We look at the economic growth now. The topic economic growth is really big. Yeah, actually, I would say it is the biggest. So we will look at a lot of things under economic growth. Yeah. As for today, I want us to look at one of the measures of economic growth, which is called the GDP, or the gross domestic product. So we are zeroing in now. We're looking at economic growth. From economic growth, we will look at what else are we going to look at? From economic growth, we will look at unemployment. Then from unemployment, we will look at inflation, and we will end with the balance of payments. That's the focus. So now we have zeroed in economic growth, and we are interested in studying the GDP, gross domestic product, GDP. So by the way, GDP are the initials. We have begun now, okay? GDP are the initials. These initials, they stand for gross domestic, that is the domestic. P is product. This is one of the measures that we use to measure whether our economy is growing. Is our economy stagnant, or is our economy shrinking? Is it declining? It is called the GDP. So GDP, please, are simply the initials, a gross domestic product. Are we fine? Are we all okay?
So you're saying it's a tool we use to measure the economy of the
Economic growth.
country.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So gross domestic product, GDP, is a measure of the income and the expenditure of an economy. We have zeroed in now. So GDP on its own now, it measures the income and expenditure of an economy. Okay, it is basically the total market value of all final goods and services produced within a country in a given period of time, usually a year, usually 1 year. Okay, so it is a total market value of all final goods. These are keywords. Final goods and the services that are produced within a country in a given period of time. Usually this time we're talking about a year. We measure a GDP every year. So we are asking ourselves, like, all the final goods. And when I mean the final goods, I do not mean the intermediate goods. By intermediate goods, we mean those goods that can be used to produce other goods. Okay, those are intermediate goods. We are talking about the final goods, like maybe bread, which is the final thing. Okay, maybe just to make you understand what we mean by final goods, let me give an illustration. There is this farmer. Okay, this farmer has wheat. Okay, this wheat from the farmer, it is sold to the baker, and not the baker, the miller. The miller will make what? Will make flour. Okay, they make flour, and from flour we sell to the baker. There is a baker here. Okay, the baker will make bread, isn't it? There is a miller here. There is a farmer. you're following the chain, right? We have a farmer here, we have a miller, we have a baker. So a farmer produces wheat, he sells the wheat to who is this guy? To the miller. Okay, so let's say a farmer who sells wheat at 30 kwacha. Okay, he sells it at 30 kwacha. Then from 30 kwacha, let's see, he sells it at 30 kwacha. He produces the wheat with 30 kwacha is sold to the miller. The miller makes the flour and he values the flour at 50 kwacha. Okay, then he sells this same flour. The miller now converts the flour to. We said there is a wheat here. I don't know if you're following this illustration. There's a wheat here produced by the farmer. It is valued at 30 kwacha, sold to the miller. The miller converts the flour into, the miller converts the wheat to flour. We have the flour here. And this flour, it is now valued at 50 kwacha. Okay, he has added value. Then he sells this flour to the baker. The baker makes bread, and just for the sake of illustration, he makes the bread and sells it at 70 kwacha. Okay, so what you can see now is that as you keep on adding value to the good here from the first stage, the prices are increasing. You're following, right? We have added value from simple wheat to flour. Since we have added value, we have increased even the price is now 50. Again, from flour, again, we have converted the flour to bread and we have increased the price now to 70. So what we are trying to say is that when I mean a final good, bread will be the final good, but flour is not a final good. It is actually an intermediate good because flour can be used to produce something else. So the flour is not counted in the GDP, in the calculations of the GDP. Is that fair?
I've got a question there.
Sorry?
Hello, sir. So if you
Hello,
say, yes, if you say bread is a
it's a final good.
It's a final good. But
Yes.
I'm also looking at copper ore, because as we don't produce we just export the raw copper to let's say to China, where
Yes,
they add also the value. But I've seen it's been added on the GDP. Any comment on that?
Okay. Oh, okay. I get it. What we are doing as a nation, since we are not converting, we are not the one converting the copper. So our copper is counted as the final good because our chain ends from copper, for us. But the conversion will be done in the other economy, that is the other country. But if you look at the example that I've given here, it is for the production that is happening within the country, like within the economy, within the same economy. But since the conversion, that conversion will be done and finished in the other country, then you count that good that you've produced, maybe copper, as the final good because you're not going to be there when you're converting to the other stage. I don't know if I've tried to answer.
I got it.
Okay, thank you. So that is what we are trying to mean, or that is what we mean when we say we are measuring the final goods, because we don't want to double count. Imagine you double count, you count the value of flour 50, you also count the value of bread 70. Okay, that is called the double counting. So we don't do that when you're calculating GDP. We're just interested in the final good, the final value of the good. Okay. That we are talking about the GDP. We are simply talking about GDP. So we said GDP is the market value of all final goods and services that are produced within a country. Okay. The keyword is within a country. When you're talking about GDP, we are looking at the production that has occurred within the country boundaries. Pay attention. GDP looks at how much have we produced in terms of the goods and the services within our country boundary. This is regardless of who owns a factor of production. In short, this is regardless of who is producing. Okay. It is regardless of who is producing. You will understand that, that sometimes within the country boundary here, we have got some companies that are owned by Chinese or that are owned by people from other countries. Okay. Even if the owners of those companies are not Zambians, whatever they produce, we add it in GDP. Just imagine. Those people are not citizens of Zambia. As we're just interested, how much production is taking place within our country, regardless of who is producing, whether they are foreigners or we are the ones. We are not interested. We're just interested how much is being produced within the country boundaries. That is what GDP is measuring. Okay. Meanwhile, because there will be this question frequently comes and you pay attention. There is what is called the gross national product, GNP. Under the gross national product, this one, it measures the final, actually it's the market value of all final goods and services that are produced by the nationals or by the people who live within our country. We are interested now under GNP, how much have our citizens produced in terms of the goods and the services. Okay, our citizens now, regardless of the country boundary now. Okay, under GNP, we are looking at there are some Zambians who own maybe companies in other countries like South Africa, UK. There are others are working in UK. You know, there is production there. They produce services. They provide labor outside the nation. We also include them when we're calculating GNP. We are interested as long as they are Zambians. So we are asking ourselves, our people, how much have they produced? Regardless of where they have produced that thing from. It could either be within the country or outside the country. But the question is, our citizens, how much have they produced? That is GNP, the gross national product. It measures the final value of goods and services, but not within the country boundaries. This one goes outside. So with the GNP, we are not interested in things that have been produced by people who are not Zambians. Okay, we are not interested in the production that is done by Chinese companies within Zambia because they are not our people. We are interested in what our people produce. Okay, is that clear on the difference between gross domestic product GDP and gross national product GNP? Are we fine with that? Hello. Do I have any question?
Oh, yes, sir. So does it also include the services that our citizens carry out outside Zambia?
Yes, it includes actually the goods and the services. Yes, it includes the goods and the services that are produced by our people, our citizens, the Zambian people, regardless of wherever they're producing from. It can be services, whether they are producing from UK or they're producing within Zambia or anywhere. But as long as they are our people, okay. We have got the Zambians who own companies outside abroad. We are interested in what those companies are producing because they are our people. Yeah. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, you answered, but I was just thinking on how are they, how as a country we are able to calculate, let's say someone who's in Australia, is working in
Okay.
Australia, how are we able
How
to
are we able
know how much is
to
getting?
capture? Oh, okay, okay. Anyway,
Yes.
thank you very much. It's a very good concern. Actually, for your own information, we are living in the digital world. So actually, every transaction, I'm sure you are aware, most of the companies that they don't pay money, even salaries by hand, and there are those issues of sending money to the bank and there are details there that are entered, and we know that those details are our people. Like there is a certain way how the system gets complex. Anyway, yeah, those are questions that you do actually in international finance. Yeah, you know, there is much work that is done at the Bank of Zambia, at the central bank, and at the Ministry of Finance. Yeah, so you are there actually dealing with computers and observing every transaction that is taking place, either within the country or outside the country. It's linked. Yeah. And we'll get to that. But the key, my key concern is, have you gotten the difference between GDP and GNP? Are you fine with that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's great. Do I have any question from anyone else? Does any other person have a question? Okay, nobody has a question, sir. You can progress. All right, so we are looking at GDP as a measure. So output is valued at market prices, okay? So it records GDP actually. We're saying that GDP actually just records only the value of final goods, not intermediate goods. I've already talked about that point. It includes both the tangible goods and the intangible goods. The tangible goods such as food, clothing, cars. Intangible goods would include the haircuts, the services, the doctor visits, all those things, they are included in the calculation of the GDP. Okay, so it includes the goods and services currently produced, not transactions involving goods produced in the past. We are not interested in what was produced in the past already. There are those transactions that involve something that was produced already, but we just introduce in new things, like what has been produced as a new thing. Are we all fine? Okay, let's look at what is not encountered in the GDP. What is it that we don't include? What is not included in the GDP? So GDP excludes items that are produced and consumed at home and that never enter the market. Okay, so these are, I'm sure you will realize these are some of the weaknesses of GDP now. It does not include the services and the goods that are produced at home. For example, if you are working from home, you produce your own things and you don't take those things to the market, those things will not be captured. And actually, most of the developing countries like Zambia, these markets that we have, it's very difficult actually to capture. Yeah, because the only things that we are capturing, the data we can capture is for the supermarkets, like the malls. But it is like Soweto, who can be able to capture data of what is being produced, what is being sold at Soweto. I'm sure you're understanding. These are some of the challenges now, the weaknesses of using GDP. Okay, so you have those problems, such as, you know, with the Soweto thing, you cannot manage to to see how much is being produced. It does not really reflect, because you find that those transactions that are done at Soweto, they don't enter into the computer, into the system. It's very difficult. Okay, so it excludes things that are sold illicitly, or such as illegal drugs. Okay, there are those things that are illegal. You do those illegal transactions, huge sums of money will come, but those things people will not open up. There are those transactions like such as there are those people, women who work in the night as whatever sexual workers. those people get money, right? But such transactions do not enter into the computers, into the system, and as a result of that, we have a problem and a challenge. Are we fine? Yes, madam.
Can you tell Steve to mute his mic?
Sorry?
Can you tell Steve to mute his mic?
Oh, okay. Let me just mute his mic.
Yes.
Okay. Are we okay now?
Yes.
Okay. Here are the key components. Let's just look at the key components of GDP. Okay. The following are the key components of GDP. Number one, we have consumption. Okay, it's a component of GDP. This measures all the goods and services that we buy for you as final goods. Okay, those are consumptions, right? Even when you buy a car, if you're not buying it to sell it again, it's a consumption, right? Do not look at consumption from the common point, from the common person's point of view, where they think consumption is all about eating, like putting in the mouth. For consumption, as long as you're buying that thing as a final good, you're not going to use it for, you're not going to use it again, like for production. You're buying it as a final good. That's consumption. Okay, it can be a service or a good. Investments, we're talking about gross investment. And that is to say, both from the private sector, from individuals, and from the government. All those investments, they're added. The government purchases the things that the government has purchased. And net exports, we are talking about the difference between exports minus imports. Okay, NX, this one means exports minus what? Imports. That's how you create the last component, this component. Okay, so we are asking ourselves the difference between how much have we exported minus how much have we imported as a whole. Is that okay? Are we fine with the components of the GDP? Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Kindly go back on the government purchases.
Oh, government purchases. So with the government purchases, we are talking about the things that the government has bought. Okay, it can be either like the things, there are some things that the government, government buys from companies, even from individuals. So it buys services, it buys goods from companies. So as long as it is the government that has bought, we call them the government purchases. Okay. Is that okay?
It's clear.
Okay, thank you. Now, it's important that we summarize whatever we have learned about GDP with a question. Let's summarize this with a question. And let me just check into my documents. See what can be used as a question. Okay. So do I have any question before we go to the question that I want to give the class? Are there any questions? There are no questions. So here are the questions. Yeah, here are the questions. Here are the questions that we have to start answering. I want to start from question number 8, because that's where what I've talked about is. We can start from question number 8 and then we'll be fine. Yeah, we'll continue answering these questions. There are many. We cannot just finish them today. Question number 8, define GDP and explain how it is measured. I think we can redefine GDP, right? We said GDP are the initials that stand for gross domestic product. And how it is measured, we said that it is actually a measure of all final goods, right? The market is the measure of the market value of all final goods and services that are produced within the time period of a year. So now, when you're measuring GDP, this is something to learn now. There are actually three approaches that you use when you're measuring GDP, okay? There is what is called the income approach that I'll talk about again in details. And there is what is called this is how we measure GDP, expenditure approach. And there is a value added approach. Value added approach. We'll do questions, actually a lot of questions on these approaches, right? The value added approach, I think that's the one we'll talk about next time when we meet. Expenditure approach and the income approach. These are the three measures that we use when we are measuring what? GDP. Is that okay? Income approach. I'll talk about the details. Actually, there'll be more questions on them so that you see how the question comes on them. Are we fine?
Yes.
Okay. Explain the three measures of GDP, and these are the three measures of GDP. There is income approach, expenditure approach, and the value added approach. Those are the three measures of GDP. Okay. What is the difference between GDP deflator and the consumer price index, CPI? Very important. Okay. We are finishing very soon. So what is the difference between GDP deflator and the CPI? So now, let's skip this one because I've not talked about, I haven't reached on this part. That's where we'll go next time. I think we can answer question 12 as well. How does the GDP differ from GNP? I think someone can just give us the explanation on this one. How does GDP differ from GNP? Those are some of the things we've talked about.
Okay, so GDP is a value of final goods and services which are produced within our country by our citizens and those non-citizens.
Okay.
While GNP, those are the goods produced beyond our country by our citizens of the country.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other response? Do we have any other response? Or we are all fine with the response?
Hello.
Oh, yes, sir.
I'm just making an addition on GNP. So it
Yes,
can
sir.
be what is produced within and outside, but it has to be nationals.
Okay, thank you. I think we are all fine with that. Then the question is, how does national income differ from the NNP? Okay, I'll comment on this next time. We'll be fine. Don't worry, we have just started. Okay, this one, question number 15. What is the difference between nominal GDP and the real GDP? You can talk about this. We're just still talking about GDP. What is the difference between the nominal GDP and the real GDP? What's the difference? Question number 15. Okay, so nominal GDP, okay, nominal GDP. This one, it measures the final value of goods and services, especially using the current year prices, okay? The key word is that it uses the current year prices. We are looking at the production, maybe how much have we produced now. Those things that were produced in terms of quantities, then we also multiply them by the prices. How much of maybe mango, let's talk about mango. How many mangoes you have? 10 mangoes that you've produced times how much one. One is 3 kwacha. This is in 20 what? This is in 2022. Okay. Then in 2023, how much mangoes you produce? 12 mangoes times what is the price? Maybe it will be 5 kwacha that time. Okay. I want you to understand. So when we talk about nominal GDP, in short, we are just multiplying the quantity of the goods and services produced this year times the prices of this very year. Okay. It is the quantity of the year, maybe let me say quantity for 2022 times the price for 2022. Then when it comes to the real GDP now, real GDP, it uses the quantity of this year. Let's take for example, we want this is 2023, right? We want to calculate the real GDP for 2023. We use the quantity for 2023. Quantity for 2023 times the price of the other year, which is the previous year. It is called the base year, actually, the year of reference. You're trying to compare with the year of reference. So say the prices of 2022. So quantity of 2023 times the prices, you use the price of 2022. So what we are saying is that you use the price of the base year or the year of reference. That is when you're calculating real GDP. So real GDP uses the prices of the year of reference or the base year, whereas nominal GDP uses the prices of what? The current year, like that very year. Maybe it's 2022, we use the quantity of 2022 times the prices of 2022. Did you get that? Hello. Did you just get that?
So you mean it is the real GDP, it's just like it's opposite of nominal GDP.
Yes, it's so actually the opposite of nominal GDP. So we will use more of examples. For example, this example which is down here. Okay, yeah, the example which is down here. And this one is not a nice example because the quantities are fixed. Let me use the next. Yeah, this one. Have you seen this table? So just for you to understand, I know that I have not kept time. We should have been of this time around. Okay, just to make you understand. Are you seeing question number 17? Look at how question number 17 is. You are seeing the quantities of, these are the yields, right? These are the quantity, the goods that you're producing is good X, good Y, and good Z, right? The quantities are quantities for X 100, 150, 25 for Z, right? These are the prices of those quantities in 2011, in 2012, and in 2013. I want to give you an example of calculating real GDP. Let me start from nominal GDP. Okay, if I say nominal GDP, for example, if I say nominal GDP for pick any nominal GDP for which year? Just pick any of these 3 years.
2011.
2011. Okay, so you use the quantity for 2011 times the price for 2011. What is the quantity for 2011 for good X? It's 100 times the price was 1, right? Plus good Y, 150 times 1.50 plus 25, that is good Z, times 3/4. Have you observed when you add all this, this is the GDP for what? Nominal GDP for 2011. Is that okay? This is when you sum all these, right? You're going to add and come up with one value, right? This is called the nominal GDP for 2011. Nominal GDP, because you're using the price and the quantity of the same year. You get it, right? The prices you're using are for 2011. You are also finding the nominal GDP for 2011. Did you get it? So get that. The assumption is that the quantities are fixed. In 2011, you produce the same quantities. 2012, you produce the same, right? Even in 2013, you produce the same quantities. So don't worry about quantities. Quantities have been fixed. In this case, they are the same. Have you understood the nominal GDP?
Yes.
I sure. Okay. Then for real GDP now, which year do you want to? We use 2011 as a base year. Let's use the 2011 as a base year. Then which year do you want to calculate real GDP? Choose any year for real GDP now. Any. Okay, let's say 2012. So we use the quantity. The quantity. We want to calculate the real GDP for 2012, right? We use the quantity for 2012 times the price for 2011, because 2011 is the base year. We have said the base year is 2011, isn't it? The base year is 2011. That's the year of references. So the prices we'll be using for 2011. So you will go get the quantity for 2012. But since the quantity we said is fixed, it is the same quantities you had for 2011 are the same quantities you have for 2012, right? They have been fixed, like each year have been the same quantities. So you will get the quantity for 2012 is still 100 times the price. Now you are in 2012, but you use the price for 2011 because it's the base year. Okay. You use how much is that? What is the price? The price is 1 kwacha. Price 150 times 1.50. Price 25 times 3 kwacha. Then you total up, that is called the real GDP. This will be the real GDP for 2012, because you were using the prices of the base year. Is that clear? Is that clear on the difference between nominal GDP and GDP?
Can we use 2013 on this one?
Yeah.
Real GDP.
Okay. We use 2013 as the prices.
Yes, the reference point would be 2011.
Okay. Let's say you are saying we use 2011 as the base year, but it is still the base year. I heard something like 2013.
No,
we use 2013.
we maintain 2011 as the base year.
Then we calculate the real GDP for 2013.
For 2013.
Yeah, you see where the challenge is. We'll still get the same answer because these quantities have been fixed. It will still be this quantity because these quantities are still for the 2013, if you observe. They have been fixed. Where we can get the different answers are when these quantities, like for 2012 are different, for 2011 are different ones, for 2012 are different, and for 2018 we have different quantities, like that. If it had been like that, we would get the different answers. I don't know if you're following. Since the quantities have been fixed, right? These same quantities, they are the same for each year. Have you followed? It would have been easier if for you to get it if these quantities were different for each year, for 2011, for 2012, and for 2013.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So maybe for the sake of understanding, let's convert let's change the quantities for 2013. Let's say these quantities for 2013 are, let's say there is 150 here, there is 120, there is 50 here. We say these are quantities for 2013. Okay. I don't know if people understand it. These are quantities for 2013. We've changed them. They are quantities for 2013. Then we want the real GDP now using 2011 as the base. So what we do, we get the quantity for 2013, quantity for 2013 times the price for 2011. Yeah. And what is the quantity for 2013? It is 150 for good X times what is the price for 2011 now, which is the basic 1 kwacha,
1.
plus 120 times
1.5.
1.5 plus 50 times 3 equal the answer. That is the real GDP for 2013. Do you get it now? Did you get it?
Yes. So
Yeah.
since
Yes,
on this question, when you look at D, there is no change. So there was no inflation. Eh?
yes, there was no change in terms of quantities have been the same. Which question is it? Was there any inflation between? Oh, okay, between 12 and the 2013. We will make an assessment when we calculate the CPI, the GDP for all of them, the real GDP, see whether there was change in terms of the prices there. Because the prices seem to have changed, isn't it? Yeah, the prices have changed between 2012 and 2013. You can see that they have changed. Yeah, but we'll calculate it when you exhaust all the lessons. And I was just interested in this part for you to understand between nominal GDP and true GDP, but we'll still zero in that and we'll conclude whether there's an increase or not. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. Do I have any questions? Any more questions before we end the lecture? All right. So thank you very much for attending today's lecture. So we are hoping to host you